I own 41 unique handmade ceramic cups. My husband would like me to adopt a one in, one out rule, such that my collection would cease to grow. But I cannot acquiesce to this constraint. I have KonMari'd the lot, and I assure you every one of them brings me joy. My collection serves my obsession with what is, water aside, the world's most popular drink, tea. Properly defined, tea does not simply mean a beverage made by soaking some part of a plant in hot water. No, tea, whether black, green, white pu'er, or oolong, all comes from a single species of plant in the camellia family, Camellia sinensis. I love Camellia sinensis in nearly every form. Tea to me is a warm fire on a cold day, a Mary Oliver poem. It is the Bach cello suites, the smell of peat moss, a cashmere sweater, Shavasana. Tea is warmth, depth, clarity, calm, solace. My view of tea is influenced by East and West, but because I was raised by an Anglophile mother, who's in the audience tonight, my tea culture is decidedly British. I take mine often with milk and honey, and I find few things more enchanting than afternoon tea with scones, lemon curd, and clotted cream. I have known from an early age that when someone asks, "Shall I be mother?" they're merely offering to serve the tea. I am not only tilting British in my tea taste, I am almost un-American because I do not drink coffee. After all, Americans drink 3 times more coffee than Brits do, and only 1/10 as much tea, nearly all of which we drink iced. Given my inclinations, it was only natural that recently, over email, I proposed to a colleague of mine that we get lunch or tea before an upcoming meeting. His reply was swift and brief. May have lunch plans. Coffee mid-afternoon? At first blush, his offer of coffee to mine of tea may seem inconsequential, a mere statement of hot beverage preference. But it was not. The American shorthand for a casual professional catch-up or get-to-know-you is let's grab coffee. It suggests suits and button-ups, paper cups, haste, and power chats by plaza fountains. But since I don't drink coffee, the phrase has always sat a little awkwardly with me. Of course, once at your chosen coffee shop, rarely does anyone mind if you opt instead for tea, but proposing to have tea has bizarrely different connotations. It feels oddly amiss, unsuitably intimate. So what's that about? Perhaps you haven't spent hours contemplating the nuanced implications of one hot caffeinated beverage over another, but I have. And I'd like to present you with a cultural equation. Coffee equals work equals men. Tea equals home equals women. An invitation to tea has been steeped in gender politics for nearly 400 years, stretching back to the mid-17th century when tea was first introduced to England from its native China. Though there is nothing now more strongly associated with Britain than tea, coffee was actually introduced and popularized in England a few years before tea. Because coffee was already established, tea was first served to the public in coffee houses. If high school European history is floating up for you now, you may recall that coffee houses were political hotbeds in Enlightenment Europe, and that they were exclusively the realm of men. The first English women to drink tea were members of the royal court who could afford to import it personally and hosted purportedly gossipy gatherings for drinking it. Tea, unlike coffee, however, made its way beyond coffee houses and royal society and into English upper-class homes by the end of the 17th century. There are several possible explanations for this domestication. Tea's popularity among ladies of the royal court might have given it more appeal among women generally. Tea's simpler preparation may also have eased this transition, as tea requires less equipment than coffee. Whatever the reason, it was at this time, circa 1690, that tea became irrevocably feminine, irreversibly domestic. In 17th and 18th century England, while the upper classes generally left food and beverage preparation to servants, it was the lady of the house who would prepare and serve tea. Wealthy women proudly took on this task because tea was believed, accurately, to have medicinal properties, and because it was extraordinarily expensive, hundreds of dollars a pound in today's currency. Because tea was believed to be fortifying and nourishing, serving tea was a form not just of hospitality, but of caretaking. The mother's role as tea preparer and server remained as tea prices dropped over the coming centuries and tea became an everyday staple in English households of all classes. No one knows exactly when or by whom the phrase, "shall I be mother," was coined. Perhaps it derived from Victorian children's playing house, for it appears in a slightly altered form in a nursery poem from 1873. It might have evolved from a superstition that a woman would become pregnant if she served the tea. It seems more likely to me that because the mother of the house always served the tea, the phrase would have originated when mother wasn't there and others volunteered to fill the void. Thus, while men drank tea and occasionally served it, tea drinking was associated with domesticity, with women's society and women's ways, and not just women, but mothers. By the end of the 19th century, the phrase, "shall I be mother," was common shorthand for "shall I serve the tea," and it has retained this meaning to this day. Let's dwell on that phrase a moment longer. Shall I be mother? That is bananas. It's delightful, misdirecting British English at its finest, and still bananas. We've equated the doling out of milk and sugar and pouring of a hot beverage to childbearing and the years a woman spends nurturing her offspring. That's fair. Tea does not have these gendered connotations in China or Japan, where it has been drunk for over 1,000 years. In giving tea an English identity, the English imbued it with notions of gender that have stretched far beyond England and that have nothing to do with the plant or the beverage itself. In this societal moment when we are all renegotiating what it means to be a woman or a man, perhaps talking about the gendered implications of tea seems self-indulgent, a mountain out of a molehill, or, forgive me, a tempest in a teacup. Does this gendering matter? I think it does, because it narrows our perspectives, not just on tea, but on all we associate with it. It confines our possibilities. Asking a colleague to have tea feels incongruent in a professional setting because tea is feminized, domestic. Because we've relegated it to a world we have distanced from work and professionalism, just as we have distanced and devalued femininity. So that when women and men alike show up to work, we bring the coffee of ourselves and are asked to leave the tea at home. No intimacy, no Bach, no solace. We are all the poorer for it. Thank you.